Welcome everyone to the DCCA webinar on conventions led by Katie Sullivan, and she is our Senior Political Director with the NCGOP. Katie, please tell us everything we need to know about conventions and what's in that fabulous packet you just sent to all the chairmen.
Awesome. And so the packet will actually be mailed out probably later this week. So I've put together this handy slideshow. I'm finalizing some of the formatting of it and just trying to make it as easy as possible for everyone to look through and understand. So what we're going to go over today is just some basic information about how to call your county convention, and just a little bit about the materials that are going to be coming back into state party headquarters. I know that Jason Lemons has already done a presentation on credentials, so I'll kind of hit the highlights of that. I'm sure we'll have a little bit of overlap, but he, as our state credentials chairman, is going to be the authority on that. And I believe that Kim Cotton West is going to be doing a presentation, and I think that's going to focus more on things at your actual county convention. So I'm kind of just doing an overview of the process and kind of what we at State Party will look at when we're reviewing your materials. Oh. So there we go. All right. So the first thing that we're going to go over is the precinct meetings. And of course, that's kind of where everything begins for our state convention delegates. So to properly call a precinct meeting is the first step in this whole long, path of becoming a delegate. Your precinct meetings have to be held in the month of February or March. And of course, if they're held in March, they can be held on the same day as your county conventions, which I think most counties do. The county chairman is the person who's going to set that date, time, and location, and they will notify the county and the appropriate folks as to what they've decided. Proper notice includes 15-day written notice to precinct chairman, and our plan of organization does specify that written notice is defined as United States Postal Service first-class mail. Some counties have adopted email, and as long as that's in your plan or you've received permission from the folks in your county to do so, that's perfectly fine as well. The postmark date or the date on the email will indicate the official day that you've given notice. So if it was postmarked on January 15th, then that is the date that you've given the notice. It doesn't really necessarily matter what day the person receives it. You also need to provide notification in a newspaper of general circulation in your county, and that also needs to be at least 15 days in advance. The advertisement needs to include the basic information, the time, date, location, and purpose of your meeting. And that can either be a paid advertisement or a news item. So either way you do it is totally fine. It just actually needs to be advertised so that anybody who's in that precinct that might be interested in attending the meeting would know about the meeting. Next up is the precinct meeting business. So the main business this year in even years is going to be to elect the delegates and alternate delegates to your county conventions. In odd years, you'll elect precinct officers, and if they're not currently organized, then that can be done this year as well. But the main focus is going to be those delegates. So the county chairman or whoever the county chairman asks to do it will need to calculate the number of delegates and alternate delegates that come from the precinct level to the county convention. So each precinct gets one delegate and one alternate delegate automatically, and then you should calculate the rest of the remaining delegates based on one additional delegate per 100 registered Republican voters in that precinct, and 100 registered alternate voters in that, or alternate delegates in that precinct. So that is all as of January the 31st. So what you can do is go to your county board of elections and ask them for a breakdown of the registered Republicans by precinct in your county as of January 31st, and they should be able to give you that information. So an example that I put on here, it's definitely a very simple example, but if Precinct A in your county has got 200 registered Republicans, then the total number of delegates to the county convention is going to be 3, and the total number of alternate delegates to the county convention will be 3. And that's made up of that 1 automatic and the 2 from the additional registered Republicans. So, of course, 200 registered Republicans divided by 100 is 2. If your county does that differently, if it's different in your plan, that is something that some counties may have altered, and that's fine as long as it ensures an equal representation of your district. But most, probably 99% of the counties are going to do that 100 registered Republicans equals 1 additional delegate. So your delegates and your alternate delegates from precinct meetings to the county convention needs to be submitted to the county secretary by the deadline that is set by the county chairman. So you'll let all of the precinct leaders know that all of your credentials are due by, just as an example, we use February 3rd. Now, February 3rd, that date needs to be 2 days prior to the county credentials committee meeting, and we'll talk more about that committee later on. But just kind of keep that in mind when you're asking your precincts to submit their delegates. And you're welcome. I will be emailing you delegate and alternate delegate forms, and you're more than welcome to use those forms and share those with your precinct officers. All right. So from the precinct meeting, we move into our county conventions. So how to call a county convention, it's very similar to calling a precinct meeting. Again, the chairman is going to set that date, time, and location of the convention. All the county conventions do have to be held in the month of March, and they need to be 10 days prior to the district convention. So I will be releasing, once all of the districts have finished their dates for their conventions, I'll be sending that out to all of the county chairmen as well. So just making sure that you're following that requirement. Proper notification of this, again, very similar. You do have to publish in a newspaper of general circulation within your county at least 15 days prior to the meeting. Again, include the time, date, and location and purpose. And that, again, can be paid advertisement or just a general news item. So if you have a reporter that's your friend that would put a blurb in there, then that's great. Or if it goes into community events or anything that your paper may do, that'd be acceptable. And then you need to notify your county executive committee 10 days prior to your convention. And that is the typical notification that you should be giving them for all of your meetings. The county chairman is going to create a county credentials committee. You should be doing this with the advice and consent of your executive committee. Your credentials committee needs to be at least 3 people, and what they're going to do is they're going to collect all of that precinct information for you, and they're going to issue a report on the delegates and alternate delegates that are going to be seated at your county convention. And there's 2 different paths here, so these are 2 separate situations. But if your precinct meetings are held prior to your county convention, then the credentials committee needs to certify that report at least 3 days prior to your convention. If there are any challenges to any delegates or alternate delegates, if maybe they don't meet a requirement, or there's confusion, they can't find their voter registration, then those delegates do need to be notified prior to the day of the convention, and they'll be able to appeal that decision and talk to the credentials committee and just say kind of why they should be a delegate, or clear up any confusion there may be. If your precinct meetings are held concurrently with your county convention, so they're held on the same day, then before any business is conducted, the credentials committee will need to share that report. And then any delegates or alternates that have any challenges against them, they will be notified that day. And they'll be, again, allowed to appeal to the decision of the credentials committee and clear up any confusion there may be as to why they weren't able to be seated. So those are the 2 options with your credentials committee. All right, so next we're going to talk about convention business in even years. And of course, 2016 is an even year convention. So you've got 3 main tasks at your county convention this year. The first is going to be to adopt or amend your county plan of organization or select to use the state plan of organization. The second is going to be to elect your delegates and alternate delegates to the district conventions. And the third is going to be to elect your delegates and alternates to the state convention. And that, of course, will be held in Greensboro the first week of May. All of those tasks and the rest of the materials that we'll talk about later do need to be submitted to NCGOP headquarters within 10 days of your convention. This is probably the thing that we have the most trouble with every year, is getting things in on time. So please try and send everything to me in a timely manner. Any district items also need to be submitted to your district secretaries in that same 10-day time span. And that applies if you are in 3 congressional districts, you do need to supply that information to all 3 districts. So the first task that we kind of mentioned was adopting or amending a written plan of organization. So any county, you can choose to adopt the North Carolina State Plan of Organization or that county plan. If you do have your own county plan, it cannot be inconsistent with the state plan of organization. So while you can tweak some things, it really does still need to follow the guidelines that are set out by the state plan. A lot of counties will add additional officers and other things through their county plan, but still follow the same procedures. Your plan of organization is going to be indicated on your transmittal sheet, which is, you can see to the right of the information. The top line, it says to choose one, and you'll just select one. And if you do choose to have your own county plan, it does need to be submitted with your credentials materials, and that needs to be submitted in that 10-day period back to me so that we can keep a file, a copy of it on file at GOP headquarters. And it also needs to be sent to your district chair or district secretary as well. And the transmittal sheet's also great because it is a checklist of things that we need with your credentials submission. And we do need a lot of things, but I'm trying to make the forms as easy as possible and everything as easy as possible to do in kind of a confusing process. So so electing your delegates and alternate delegates. So your delegates and alternate delegates to your district conventions and state conventions are going to be elected at your county convention. In the first week of February, I will be sending you an email with a list of how many delegates and alternate delegates each district or each county has to their district conventions and to the state convention. This is done through a formula that's laid out in the plan of organization. You do have one automatic delegate, and then you get an additional delegate for every 250 Republicans or major fraction added on to that. And then you also get one delegate and one alternate delegate for each member of the Republican elected to the state legislature or to public office on the state or national level. And then that additional delegate for an elected official, for the district conventions, that applies to the district that they actually reside in. So that will help many of you have some extra delegates and alternates to your district conventions and the state convention. All delegates and alternate delegates have to be selected at the county convention. They don't necessarily need to be there, but they do need to have been elected at the convention. You are not allowed to add anybody else after that your county convention is done. We have had instances where folks were left off of a list that they felt they should be on. We were able to check the sign-in sheets, and the credentials committee, the statewide credentials committee, will be able to make decisions on that. But everybody has to be elected at your county convention.
So usually as part of the agenda, there's, I think the convention chair says, are there any other delegates who need to be added who may not be present but sent in a letter? Are there any, so hopefully every convention will have that so nobody's forgotten.
Exactly. And as Lee said, they don't have to be there, but they do have to be elected there. So they should be reaching out to the county chairs or other folks that are going to be at their convention saying that they would like to be included on that list. So delegates and alternate delegates do have to fit certain guidelines in order to be eligible to be a delegate or alternate. They have to be a registered Republican as of January 31st, 2016, and they need to be registered to vote in your county. So if for example, am registered to vote in Wake County, I could not be a delegate from Johnston County. And if they're elected to a congressional district convention, they have to live within that congressional district. That's just kind of the basic requirement, and that's how we calculate the numbers. So that's kind of where they need to fall. We also require that delegate spots are filled before your alternate delegate spots. If you fill all your delegate and alternate spots, that's fantastic, but please don't leave, if you have 12 delegates, please don't fill 10 of those spots and then have 5 alternate delegates. That you do need to fill your delegate spots first. All right, so you've had your county convention, and Kim Cotton West, I believe, is going to talk to you more about helpful hints for holding your convention. But so you've done your convention at this point. Now what do? You have to submit your materials to us. And this is where a lot of confusion comes in. So the county chairman and county secretary should be working together to compile your credentials materials. As I mentioned before, everything is due to NCGOP headquarters no later than 10 days following the date of the county convention. So please make sure you're getting those in on time. We do prefer that you email it and send a hard copy. The materials required are going to be your transmittal sheet, which we showed you earlier, your county officer list, and your county precinct officer list. I know that there won't necessarily be new officers elected, since this is an even year election and county officers are chosen in odd years. But if you could send us your most up-to-date list just to make sure that we have the best information possible, that'd be great. A lot of counties have had changes on their executive committee and at the precinct level. We just want to make sure that we know who is currently on your executive committees. You need to supply your delegate list and your alternate list. And all of those I'll show you forms in just a moment for that. You need to supply a copy of your newspaper notice, and just make sure that your newspaper notice that does have proof of the date that it published, so we can make sure that followed all requirements. We do need a check that will be for $2 per submitted delegate and alternate delegate. So if you submit 2 delegates, you need to submit $4. This helps us to offset the cost of vetting the delegates and for the mailings, because we'll of course mail them an invitation, and we'll mail them whatever they need to know. We ask that you submit a photocopy of your county convention sign-in sheet, and that's something that the credentials committee can use if there is anybody who's saying they should have been included on the list but weren't. It kind of helps them look back and say, oh, this person was at the convention, maybe they were accidentally left off of the list. And it's just another tool that the statewide credentials committee can use. A new form that this isn't something that's required per the plan of organization, but that I'm kind of asking folks to submit is a public contact sheet, and we will talk about that more in just a moment. All right, so helpful hints for submitting your delegates to us. I will show you a copy in just a second, just a screenshot of what the spreadsheet's going to look like. We do need you to fill out those forms completely. So mail them and email them back to us so that we have them in both formats. If you haven't received these forms by the last week of January, just go ahead and let me know, and you can send me an email at katie.sullivan@ncgop.org. And then while you're filling out those forms completely, make sure that you're including people's mailing addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses. These are really important. We need to have their best, mailing address so we can send them information on convention, and phone numbers and email addresses if we need to reach them because of any questions about their eligibility to be delegate. Providing delegate and alternate delegates full legal names. This is something we every single year have problems with. Don't give us nicknames. I go by Katie, but my real name is Catherine Elizabeth. I'm registered to vote as Catherine Elizabeth. So we need that information so that we can, when we're verifying them, it saves us a lot of time. We can, pull them up on the State Board of Elections, make sure they were a registered Republican as of January 31st in the county that they're coming from, and move on to the next one. If you send me Katie, then I would have to go, and Katie Sullivan that doesn't pop up at this address, then I have to go through trying to figure out, am I a Kathy, a Catherine, and all kinds of other names. There's also like 500 ways of spelling Catherine. So it's just easier if you send us the correct name and spelling information. Again, providing that best mailing address. We do mail all of the information to the address that you provide. So that's really helpful for us. Alphabetizing your list is very helpful. And again, submitting both an electronic and hard copy. One thing that, again, we have issues with a lot, county officers are not automatically delegates. They have to be on your list of delegates and alternate delegates. If they're not and they show up at convention, they are not a delegate and they have to go to credentials committee. We always have issues with this as well. So I'm just kind of trying to head off any issues before we have them. Each page of your delegate and alternate delegate list should be signed by your county chair and secretary. And we do ask that you send us that original copy so that we have that on file up here. Please type your forms. We always have people handwrite the forms and then we have to go back and type them. And sometimes it's very hard to read handwriting when it's on, because they'll take the Excel sheet and just handwrite. So that just makes it very difficult. And again, another issue we usually have pop up with a few counties is when you're submitting your newspaper announcement, include proof of the date of publication so that we know that it was published 15 days in advance. So here is an example of what the spreadsheets are going to look like. This is the delegate one, but the alternate delegate one and your county officers one will look very similar. Making sure that you're including their full legal name, first, middle, and last, as they're registered, giving us their best address, their phone number, and their email address. And I highlighted blue, type your county name so that when inevitably one gets lost, we don't, or, just put with a different stack or something, we're not confused as to where it belongs. Of course, the county officer list has a column in it for the position of what that person is serving as. But they all look just like this, and I will be sending you an electronic copy of it, and we'll also include a CD of it, CD-ROM drive, or CD-ROM copy of it in your packets that we'll be mailing out in case you can't access it through email.
And I hope also there's a column for like junior, senior, third, fourth, because sometimes people live at the same address, same name, everything.
Yep. And there's not right now, but I'm going to make myself a note to add that. So thank you. So perfect. Well, I'm adding that in there. So there will be a column for junior, senior, the third, etc. All right. The other form that we're going to ask you to do is this county public information form. And this is something, it's not required by the plan, but it's going to be really helpful for us. We are working on improving our website. And I get calls every day of, how do I get in touch with Wake County Republican Party? So I know a lot of county chairs might not want their cell phone number distributed, or they might not want, their personal email address distributed that we might use internally. So I created a public contact form. What'll happen is we'll take this information and, the best phone number, it doesn't have to be the county chair's phone number. If you have a county headquarters, you can provide that phone number. That's totally fine. Just the best way for somebody to get in touch with your county party if they want to be involved.
That's a great idea.
We're also, pardon?
Great idea.
Oh, thank you. We're also asking you if you do have a county GOP office to include that so we can put that online. And we're asking if you have a county website so that we can share a link to the websites, because I know a lot of you will include information about what's going on in your county on those sites. And you can send that completed form. That can just be emailed to me. If you want to include the hard copy, that's totally fine. But this is just kind of an informal page that I'm kind of putting in there just to try and make our life a little bit easier and try and be providing the best information that we can. And this will go, we are updating our website, so this will go on that updated website. And we've already talked about the transmittal form. So that's kind of the overview that I wanted to go through and the things that I see the most problems with. I know it, and it sounds like the folks that are on right now are veterans, but there are a lot of new folks, and it is a really big process. And, don't be embarrassed to ask questions. There are no stupid questions, only the ones you don't ask. So please feel free to call or email me, and I'll be as receptive and responsive as I can be. And just really, always, especially with credentials, I would much rather folks ask questions ahead of time than for us to have to be tracking you down after. So just thank you for tuning in. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Okay, the only question I have is more of a request. Your slides here, could you send those to us?
I certainly can.
Yeah.
And I did.
I was frantically taking notes, but I'm sure I missed 50% of it.
You're fine. This is easy. I can print this out and send it with the county chair handbook. And I know the typical handbook that goes out, I did restructure it a little bit, and I'm working with a couple of the district chairs to make sure that I haven't missed anything or forgotten to include anything. So that will go out shortly, and it's more of a step-by-step guide this time, kind of what I did on the PowerPoint. So
okay,
just kind of make it easy and user-friendly.
Well, great. Thank you for all your hard work on that. So Monty and Peter, do you have any tips for new convention organizers?
Not really. I'm in an information gathering mode here.
Okay. Well, thank you so very much for joining us. Thank you, Katie, very much. And we look forward to also Kim Cotton webinar on other details on how to run a great convention. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.